she readied for her first session. Anakin, of course, would remain at the bottom of the tower, pacing impatiently until she finished up. Master Yoda welcomed Ahsoka into their ranks as the youngest counselor in Order history. He called it a great honor to have her in their ranks, and everyone else gave their congratulations to her, before immediately turning to the first point of business. Ahsoka just listened and tried to keep up. No one said anything else to her directly. The excitement and adrenaline surrounding the whole process quickly disappeared as the reality of it sat in. Not to say that Ahsoka was super excited, but she had continuous butterflies until they started talking about movement in the mid-rim and pushing for final siege lines in the outer rim. There were some quick notions and discussions about the politics of the Republic, as Adi Gallia listed off some potential moves to expect from the Palpatine administration in the next few days to week. It was so much to digest for Tano, but she kept up as best as possible. For a first session, she didn't really say anything, mirroring Master Plo Koon until the session concluded, and Mace asked to speak with Ahsoka alone. Once everyone left the chamber, she agreed. So Anakin, downstairs, had to watch all the counselors file out of the elevator as one by one, as Ahsoka remained to be the last one behind. The two Jedi Masters didn't move from their seating, and instead, Mace told Ahsoka a story. She came from a very strong lineage, one where several Jedi had the opportunity to join the ranks of the High Council. Yoda, Dooku, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan were all offered seats or joined. Of course, Master Skywalker wasn't on the council because it wasn't in Peele's last words. But there was a point to this. Dooku and Qui-Gon were both outside-the-box thinkers, people that the Jedi Council tried to bring into their ranks for diverse opinions. While Dooku rejected the offer, his closest friend, Sifo Dyas, did not. He became a member, and he came with a lot of baggage. Sifo Dyas made his mistakes. People suffered for those mistakes, but he was a good friend and a good person. Mace continued, even iterating points made by Plo the previous day about the Council avoiding a challenging voice due to the war. Comfort may have been safe, but it wasn't what they needed, and even Peele knew that. This move was very similar to Tyvoka's move that added Plo Koon to their ranks. The Master of the Order came to his conclusion with this. He told Ahsoka to not lose her voice. She was one of them, and they all accepted that. She was here by the will of the Force, and they would want to hear her thoughts as they came. Though it should be said, hence the reference to Sifo Dyas, that it is also very easy to get swept up into the power of all of it. Sifo Dyas was well into his life by the time he joined, and he made countless mistakes. Ahsoka would make mistakes, that was without question, but don't let the position go to her head. He also meant that in two different ways. Don't let it get to her head in the egotistical way as Sifo Dyas had, and don't let the grandeur of the position take her out of it. Pressure came with the role, but she had defeated pressure before. She'd overcome obstacles, and her own master thought very highly of her. Even if this wasn't the direction she was ready for yet, fate rarely calls upon one at a moment of their choosing. He smiled and patted her shoulder, suggesting that she should get going. He was sure Skywalker was waiting for her downstairs. The next full week of interaction with the High Council had Ahsoka struggling to get a grip on the whole process. She kept up, but she frequently used a datapad to track information inside the discussions. Ahsoka was bound for the front lines in the coming few days, so she had to be ready to balance war and conference. The counselors warned her to keep an eye on the datapad, because while she might only be using data points for notes and not full-blown strategies, it could potentially be deciphered by separatists. She was mature enough to understand that though, so she used it as a moment to scoff at the council and even push back a little. Ahsoka wasn't playing hardball yet by any means, but she was getting comfortable with interacting with them in such close proximity. She really only knew Plo and Obi-Wan the most. She and Yoda obviously connected enough for him to assign her to Skywalker, but everyone else was different. Being the youth amongst a council that had a combined age of well over 1,000 years was difficult. She listened to their plans and added nothing yet, though this coming campaign with Master Skywalker would be everything she needed. Anakin, on the other hand, thrived as an official Jedi Master. He and Ahsoka didn't interact much during the previous week, because of everything she had to do with the council and some political, religious, and societal lessons with Windu, Plo, and Kenobi. Now, she had a chance of getting back into the flow of fighting with her real master and joining the boys of the 501st. During her battles with Skywalker by her side, she reclaimed her presence. She was Commander Tano, not the underdog Jedi Counselor. All of her men respected her, and while the counselors did, she undermined herself by sitting inside of her own head rather than the actual chamber she was in. The High Council wanted her opinion and her thoughts, but she shared none of them because she truly thought she was incapable of relating due to her youth. Ahsoka wasn't one of the elder Jedi with decades of experience. She didn't even have 2 decades. But that's why the miniature campaign mattered. Not only did Anakin remind her, but the clones and her time on the battlefront gave her a chance to see what she was capable of again. When she felt things, she thrived. Whenever she got stuck in her head, she lost concentration and started doubting herself. She had some hologram meetings with the Council and spoke to Anakin about pretty much everything. He refused to tell her how to operate though. Anakin had his disagreements with the operations of the Council, but he didn't force his personal thoughts onto Ahsoka. He didn't want her to feel as if she was being pressured by him to act in any which way. Instead, he encouraged her to think for herself, and challenged them whenever she felt they had something worth going after. The first month and a half of Ahsoka's time on the High Council didn't change much. Master Skywalker, on the other hand, had a grand time being a Jedi Master. He'd frequently go into the restricted section of the archives to investigate and rent out holocrons for personal study. These weren't really Force-related powers, but lightsaber skills. Anakin was eating through information rapidly, and he loved it. There was a certain freedom he felt by being an official Jedi Master. Sure, those freedoms pretty much existed prior to their ascension to the actual rank, but it felt like he could get away with a lot more because he had a title. Skywalker was given the option to instruct other Jedi. He rejected. He believed full-heartedly that he was still instructing Ahsoka, which was actually the truth. Anakin didn't want to make Ahsoka feel like she was being abandoned. Of course, she never would come to that conclusion, but he wanted to be present for her, as her master. Ahsoka was grateful for this, and Anakin remained in the background, evolving rapidly throughout her entire time on the Council. The aforementioned month and a half also had Ahsoka visiting the Chancellor for the first time. As Ahsoka learned more about the High Council, the politics they played during the Clone War, and historically, she started to see something. None of the counselors caught on to it because of their position as Jedi generals, but Ahsoka, without having to focus on 2 completely different fronts, thanks to Anakin being the general, she realized that the Jedi were being played. Historically speaking, based on Plo's, Mace's, and Obi-Wan's lessons, the Jedi had a habit of supporting the Chancellor. During the old and golden years of the Republic, they weren't serving the Senate without loyalty from the body of government. Nowadays, though, they were blindly hoping that a corrupt Republic might throw them a bone once in a while. Through discussions with Palpatine, she saw the Chancellor demand excellence from them in his own sly way. They abided because they needed support from the Chancellor and the Republic. This cycle was not the same as it had traditionally been. With the Sith Empire and the Nihil, there had been mutual success based on mutual trust. The failures of the early war were not just because of this fracture in unity, so she wasn't trying to say that. More or less, her question for the Council was this: if they were loyal to a government that did not respect them, and they won, then where did they stand in the era of peace that followed? This line of questioning brought up a fair reality to the Jedi to question themselves. They were remaining loyal to the Republic, in service to them, and sacrificing their lives for what? The Jedi obviously weren't being baited by the concept of reward. However, they did recognize something based on Ahsoka's question. They were constantly losing funding from the Senate, facing external reviews, and frequently being positioned on propaganda as warmongers on both sides. They were the Jedi Order, defenders of peace and justice, and the droid armies were disrupting that. What Ahsoka did was exactly what her lineage had done over the past several decades though: challenge the Jedi Council and what they thought they knew. The Order was blacklisted as the enemy, and they took it, because serving the people while remaining in favor of the Republic was more important. Ahsoka was outraged by this. How could they allow themselves to be seen in such a light? Palpatine walked all over them and they barely tried to hold their own and never did so anyways. Her question lingered in the air. The Jedi never joined the war in hope for some sort of thanks from the galaxy. However, they shouldn't just openly accept that they were going to be mistreated for simply providing. They all needed to play hardball. Ahsoka even raised her voice ever so slightly to say she would go to the Chancellor and demand fairness. If they were going to serve the Republic, then the Republic should be more than willing to serve them. She suggested a separation, and in turn, a reliance on the local Republic systems with loyalty to the Republic. If the Jedi didn't want to abandon the war, then she would understand. But imagine a scenario where the Jedi could rely on hundreds of star systems, while earn the trust of thousands more over time. Palpatine was not on their side, even if he was Republic aligned, so why not try something new? Look at Senators Amidala, Organa, Mothma, or Chuchi. They all owed their lives to the Jedi, and respected the Order greatly. Look at Cham Syndulla and Satine Kryze. These people knew who the Jedi were, and if these governments could chip in a little extra, the Jedi might even come out on top. Ahsoka understood the funding needed to function as an organization, but that funding didn't need to come directly from the Chancellor. They were being mistreated. She hadn't seen it because she knew no other path, but now she understood it. It was time for them to make their voices heard, recognized, and most importantly, respected. This line of thought is exactly why even Peel wanted Ahsoka inside the council. Not that he had any reason to assume that she would suggest this, but rather that she would bring a new perspective and offer something the other elders could not. To say the council was taken aback would be an understatement, but they started to run through the list of options they had. Another bill was being proposed by the Chancellor that was meant to limit their budget once again. The Jedi did nothing but support the government, and here came their chance to separate. However, the name Jedi would also remain synonymous with the sect the CIS and Republic propaganda was targeting. So they might become more financially stable, but their outreach wouldn't be changed, perhaps even hindered more. Ahsoka believed it could all be earned back. If they needed to, then they could perhaps try and change their name quote-unquote officially, so that they could be identified from a neutral standpoint. Regardless, it was worth a shot. Everyone on the council, including herself, had a close contact inside the Senate. They didn't need to continue suffering for nothing. The council, while initially slow to fully grasp the concept, actually liked it a lot. This wasn't like Sifo Dyas, Dooku, or even Qui-Gon, all of whom might have suggested an all-out divorce from the Republic. Rather, Ahsoka gave them a chance to remain the same, to maintain their relationships, but expand naturally, as the Republic tried to break them down. A vote came, and almost unanimously, it was agreed upon. The Jedi were going to fight fire with fire, and once the session ended, they quickly got into communication with their allies. Ahsoka had a discussion with Padme and Anakin over a supper at her apartment. Master Tano didn't want to make the Chancellor look like the bad guy, but she had to be honest with her instructor too. Palpatine was hurting the Jedi intentionally, and if not that, then ignorantly. Padme had her own concerns for the Jedi because of these budget cuts. She did though express her pride in Ahsoka for making a choice and bringing up a point of contention with a collection of elders. That took guts, but standing up for what was right held far more importance than just letting it pass her by. She didn't buckle when the odds were against her. She should be proud of that. Despite the political challenge, the battlefront still called to Masters Tano and Skywalker, so they left Coruscant once again. All the different senators and representatives that the Jedi reached out to got into contact with their local governments, and an assortment of processes were started. Importantly for Ahsoka, she and Anakin continued their training and development. With Skywalker thriving thanks to assistance from holocrons in the restricted section, Ahsoka grew too. Their training with one another only progressed faster. Not that they weren't already soaring as a duo, but some of the holocrons offered different perspectives, ironically. They required the rank of Master because the Jedi worried about immature individuals attempting to gain certain powers through the use of the dark side, which, yes, Some of what Anakin was learning came with using the dark side too. Ahsoka accidentally also did, and they basically perfected what they were trying to learn in each holocron because of that. But this was a controlled iteration of darkness, not exactly as advanced or mastered as Windu's Vapad, but close enough in that same range. The Council continued their deliberations. They made arrangements and deals with various governments around the galaxy. Bail Organa led the charge, thanks to his wife being the literal queen of Alderaan. With such a prominent core world pushing to support the Jedi Order individually, other systems quickly fell in line. The crazy part about Alderaan is that it received government bonuses from the Republic for taking on millions of refugees during the war. Alderaan was already prosperous, so in accordance with the Jedi needing help, Queen Breha and her government promised to match the price the Republic was paying. The promise was that the Jedi would focus on humanitarian relief more than the war. It was a shocking promise from Alderaan, but its leadership and citizens loved the Jedi Order. They never forgot about the Sith Empire attacking their home world thousands of years ago, and then the liberation led by Satele Shan. The Jedi were considered extended family. After Alderaan's contribution came a massive sum of credits from Mandalore, then Chandrila, Naboo, Toydaria, Eridu, and even the Bothans. It was a collective movement to assist the Jedi Order so that they could protect a wider base of people. Mandalore's inclusion in this, though, created an immediate problem. Because Mandalore was neutral territory, it made them a potential target for the CIS because they were helping the Jedi. Palpatine told the Order that they could either reject that payment and hope that Mandalore wouldn't be affected, or separate themselves from the Republic. Well, ironically, the Jedi went for a third option, one proposed by Ahsoka before funding even came in. The Order would change their name to protect themselves and those who donated. No longer officially the Jedi Order, and now the Bushido, named after an old code the Order used to follow. Under this new name, the Jedi were no longer required to meet requirements from the Galactic Republic. They weren't even subservient to them anymore. That didn't stop the Jedi from serving alongside clone troopers, though. It sent the government into a tailspin of fury, because they needed a scapegoat, and the religious monks that fought a war for them were that. They struggled to get any movement inside the Rotunda, though. Senators from across the Senate mostly wanted that money that they were giving to the Jedi back, and now they no longer had to provide it because the Jedi were getting it elsewhere. Palpatine was furious. Some of his biggest allies cared because he did. But overall, the Senate received more budget spending for the next cycle because they weren't paying the Jedi, and people were happy. It was a win-win for everyone in their eyes except for the Sith Lord. The perfect result. The Jedi could continue to help in the war, while remaining almost entirely independent. Not a terrible deal at all either, and the Jedi were quite happy with it too. As a Bushido order, the Jedi continued to serve with the clones in advisor-like roles, helping on strategy and using the term self-defense very loosely. With the extra funding and support from various neutral systems, some Jedi were paired up with leadership under threat, specifically Satine. This new Bushido sect could also help out separatist worlds because all the laws created for the Jedi during the war were for the quote-unquote Jedi, not the Bushido. The law said Jedi in the name. The Bushido were technically not that anymore, so they could freely move around the galaxy as a neutral entity. The Chancellor searched for ways to undermine the Jedi, but it continued to blow up in his face. The Senate really didn't care about the Order anymore. The only reason they ever agreed on budget cuts or external reviews on the Jedi was the money. The Senate was greedy, and by removing that greed from their hands, none of them had any agenda against the Jedi. Maybe, yeah, one or two did because of patriotic duties, but not half of the entire Senate population. Hell, even some of the representatives that disliked the Jedi had their planetary government supporting them, because it was beneficial for everyone involved. The Order not only removed its political identity, but created a bubble of protection for itself from systems that agreed to help. Though it should be said that even with the Jedi overwhelmingly pleased about having a far larger budget, there was a problem. Some of these systems were hoping to bribe the Jedi into becoming a protective service, treating them like they had a private army. The Bushido Order didn't fall into these traps, but it was hard. Alderaan, Chandrila, Naboo, and Mandalore were spending credits because they had credits to give. Other systems like Scipio wanted protection for the banking clans. The Bushido did not take bribes though. Ahsoka's outside-the-box thinking led to Kit Fisto suggesting that the Jedi make all the transactions public information. Not only would people know what systems were giving to the Jedi, but where all of their credits were being spent. As the transition from Jedi to Bushido transpired, they also changed their logo from an older iteration. It was meant to separate themselves from the corruption of the Republic and their failures to break it before it got too far. Over the next several months, the war heated up and became far more explosive. Anakin transformed into a true Jedi, but Palpatine's voice still lurked in his mind. It was a much more aggressive assault from the Sith Lord. Instead of just forcing interactions to happen by pulling Anakin away from deadly battles, he literally would plant himself inside of Skywalker's mind. The death of Jedi friends, loved ones, and instructors filled his dreams. The Republic became irrelevant inside the council chambers though, and when Anakin spoke to Ahsoka about his visions, she went to the council. Thanks to Barriss Offee changing her plans to bomb the hangar bay, tension inside the Order never really came. She decided to place her energy in relief efforts, without Master Luminara by her side. Barriss, like many other young Jedi, thrived as the Bushido sect took on a less warlike approach to the conflict in the galaxy. But her decision to not bomb the temple gave Masters Plo Koon and Depa Billaba a chance to take Anakin away from the capital to focus on a deep meditation to break out of these forced visions and nightmares. The Jedi didn't assume these visions were plants, but because Anakin told Ahsoka exactly what these dreams were about, instead of layering it behind the guise of attachment avoidant, Depa and Plo were able to focus on the root problem. Anakin's communication with Ahsoka was much clearer than it would have been with Yoda, so while Ahsoka didn't go out of her way to tell these counselors exactly what Anakin was feeling or seeing, she was able to communicate it more efficiently because she wanted Anakin to get the best help as possible. It came without mentioning specific people, but also how unnatural their deaths seemed. These weren't war-related conflicts, like Anakin would have insinuated they were in a conversation with Yoda. Instead, Ahsoka suggested that these deaths were forced by predetermined circumstances that did not relate to the actions these individuals were facing, i.e., targeted attacks or assassinations. Depa and Plo volunteered to set out and root these problems during a meditative journey with Anakin. Yet in their absence, Sidious was hopeful to turn the government against the Jedi Order. For the past few months, he'd been preaching inside the Senate the idea of making the Bushido out into being a separatist ally. Essentially, he wanted to legally turn them into rivals of the Republic because they supported CIS planets that were suffering. As a note, the Separatist Parliament vetoed anything Dooku tried to do to make this happen on their end. There were a few senators who bought it because they feared the Jedi collaborating with the Separatists, but it really didn't go anywhere. The thing is, the Jedi still helped the clones on the battlefield. The Separatists weren't exactly thrilled about it, especially in government, but the Jedi were only destroying battle droids, and they didn't really ever commit to invasions or campaigns, just defenses, which wasn't a big deal either. So the CIS couldn't really be super unhappy about it. Also, these Bushido warriors were doing humanitarian relief elsewhere in the galaxy. They went from public enemy number 1 to none. No one really cared what they did because planetary money never really affected the Senate budget. Most of the systems donating to the Jedi were using throwaway funds that would have been used to create monuments or something else lavish. It was better spent on a force designed for good, one that they could track doing good. Palpatine, in all of his anger, believed only one course of action could be acted on, and he, in the middle of the evening, issued out Order 66 to the entire clone army. He waited patiently for this moment. Finally, after all of this internal frustration with the Jedi, it could be done. And then, his eyes turned towards the Jedi Temple, only for nothing to come. He didn't understand, and neither did the clones. Order 66 affected them because it turned them into Jedi hunting machines. But there were no Jedi, only the Bushido. So, because the Jedi changed their Order name, they were no longer quote-unquote Jedi officers or generals. Order 66 therefore meant nothing. The clones just got an order and wondered what the purpose for such an action would have on them. Palpatine picked a time where Skywalker would be away from the temple, and yet nothing really changed. The Jedi were fine. The Order traveled around and the clones acted a little different, but not a single death would come from the activation of Order 66, because Bushido advisors were not Jedi. The Jedi Order never caught on either. Despite some of them seeing a hooded man order the execution of some Order 66, they couldn't figure out who was behind it. Some of the Jedi reported it to the Council, but they all assumed it was just Dooku trying to break through communication relays. It clearly failed, so why would they be concerned except for security breaches? Sidious was beyond disappointed though. He couldn't believe it. Order 66 did nothing, and it brought him no satisfaction and no victory. Despite this, the return of Maul was still imminent, and Adi Gallia would unfortunately be killed by his brother Savage, though this would leave another open seat on the Bushido Council, one that would be given to Anakin. The growing youth on the council may have been concerned for the likes of Ki-Adi-Mundi, but they were a very healthy addition. Also, insanely stacked lineage inside the same body of the council, with Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka all as members of the same council. His addition didn't change a whole lot, aside from him learning about what Palpatine was trying to do to undermine the Bushido sect. Anakin couldn't believe it, but he also turned a blind eye to it, hoping that if he ignored it, Palpatine would magically stop trying to hurt the Jedi and turn them in on themselves. But the Sith had themselves a larger problem to worry about. Several clones reported the Order 66 incident, believing it to be a problem in security. Quietly, the Senate would create a committee to investigate it, led by Amidala. They called it the Wartime Solutions Panel, basically allocating former Jedi funds to themselves to hire an investigation to start a deep dive search into the Order 66 ordeal. It would take months to come to a total conclusion, but over that time, while Palpatine was still trying to fix the war to favor himself, which was going terribly, and also trying to turn Skywalker against the Bushido, Senate investigators started connecting dots. Order 66 was executed around the middle of the second year of the war, giving these investigators plenty of time to find the culprit, while Palpatine was still trying to make himself Emperor, get rid of the Jedi, and make the war seem unwinnable. The conclusion was shocking, but it led to a thorough examination by the panel, and eventually, the slow betrayal of Palpatine from inside the Senate. The irony in the end would be that Order 66, designed to destroy the Jedi, would unravel the great Sith plan. While the Bushido wouldn't really ever know about this, the end of the Sith came with a final stand, similar to an Alamo type of engagement. Grievous, Dooku, Sidious, and a couple of other battle droids holding down a fort inside of Castle Sereno. The Senate would dispatch thousands of clones to take out Sidious, and they would ferry to the planet, while a space battle raged in the atmosphere. First, the battle droids would die off, with Grievous and Dooku sequentially after. Sidious would stand his ground in the fight, with the very clones he commissioned. A final stand, one that would, for Sidious, end in defeat. He and his allies may have taken the lives of well over a couple thousand clones during the siege, but it still did not result in a Sith victory. The Bushido never found out. The Senate would cover it up, in an effort to maintain Palpatine's image as a public servant. The war naturally was already turning towards a Republic victory. The Jedi stayed out of the way, and there was no reason for them to involve themselves in the apparent sickness that killed the Chancellor, or the final battles of the war. The clones were leading constant offensives, which the Jedi had no stake in because they only defended territory. Thanks to their positions on the Council, Anakin and Ahsoka accompanied Obi-Wan to Mandalore in a fight that would consume Maul and his brother. The system that led the Neutral Systems Coalition would survive, and Death Watch would crumble. Without the support given to the Jedi by Mandalore, this assault by the pirate faction would have probably succeeded. The neutral Bushido, though, were the perfect cure to the pirate threat. While the Clone War would continue on far longer than it would have with Sidious, turning into a 5-year-long drawn-out conflict, it would end in victory. The Republic coming out on top after defeating the Confederacy came with an assortment of problems, but with a powerful neutral coalition standing in the way of total galactic dominance, the Republic actually had to focus on their citizens. The Jedi did everything they could to fill the middle ground with protection and assistance for citizens of every faction. Yet they were needed to be advisors in the discussions between the Republic, Coalition, and Confederacy. The CIS crumbled in on itself, and the Coalition was strong behind leaders like Satine. Eventually, deals would come, peace arranged, and the Jedi would come out on top as heroes of the end of the conflict. Their position in humanitarian relief saw them as who and what they were truly meant to be. Ahsoka's position on the Council started that. Now with her master by her side on that same council, the two of them would be able to trailblaze the Jedi Order into a new future. One with rapid change that positively impacted not just the lives of those around the galaxy, but the souls that called the Jedi Temple home. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all the patrons for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. So this story, I really thought it'd be interesting to create a scenario where Ahsoka became a master before Anakin. And the only way that's really possible is like if a dying wish is done. Again, like I said in the story,
Darth, theorist, rise.
What if the entire Jedi Council confronted Palpatine in his office? Let's explore the depths of it in the video.
I think Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord.
A Sith Lord?
Yes, the one we've been looking for.
How do you know this?
He knows the ways of the Force. He's been trained to use the dark side.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Then our worst fears have been realized. We must move quickly if the Jedi Order is to survive.
Master, the Chancellor is very powerful. You'll need my help if you're going to arrest him.
Mace stares at Anakin in shock, wondering whether or not the boy is trying to mess with him. But when he looks at the boy, he does not see confusion or resentment. He sees sincere concern about what they might face. It is enough to give Mace pause as he regards the boy.
What did you see? He knows of powers that the Jedi have never heard of. He claims he can prevent death with his abilities, and I'm not certain if those claims are true. I have never heard of such powers, but the Sith is unlike anything I've ever encountered. And he's confided all these things in me. So please, trust me to help you, Master. I know the Chancellor better than anyone. I can do this. Skywalker, if what you say is true, I am not even certain if that is enough. I'm confident in my abilities, but we are in a dangerous situation. Very well. You will join me when the time comes, but that is not now. I will not confront the Chancellor with anything less than full strength.
He suddenly turns back and makes his way towards the Jedi Council chambers. Anakin can only follow in surprise as he wonders what Mace will do. The older Jedi reaches for his communicator and begins sending messages to the rest of the Council, warning about the situation. He tells them to return to the Jedi Temple immediately, and in secret, lest they risk the Chancellor being alerted to their plan. The first to answer is Obi-Wan, who just finished defeating General Grievous. It is easy enough for him to leave Cody in charge of the battle. Meanwhile, Yoda informs Luminara and Quinlan Vos and tells them to command in his stead. The same is true for Master Plo and Stas Ali. All quietly depart their fronts, leaving their clone commanders in charge of operations while they are gone. This is a risky move, but it also leaves Palpatine in limbo. Without the Jedi trying to take action, he has nothing to use against them in his takeover of the Senate. So he's left to simply delay handing back emergency powers until an opportunity presents itself. However, Padme and the other senators try to press him and hand back powers now that General Grievous is dead. Still, he is skillful enough to at least buy himself some time as the Jedi Council begins to trickle in. As they arrive, Anakin recounts everything he told Mace Windu about the Chancellor. Their eyes widen with shock at the news. The thought that a Sith could infiltrate the highest echelons of their government is terrifying, and yet at the same time it makes perfect sense. Palpatine was able to gain considerable power during this time in office, and now he is the most powerful Chancellor in recent memory due to the powers he's accumulated through the war. As they assemble, all 11 Jedi Masters and Anakin prepare to confront the Chancellor. They agree on the plan, which is to demand his surrender and present evidence of his corruption. However, with their presence, Anakin is watched carefully, as all of them can sense the conflict within him. They know that he's always been close to Palpatine, but they remind him of his duty to the Jedi Order and the Republic. Glancing around, Anakin manages a shaky nod.
Don't worry about me. I understand what is at stake here.
With that, they nod and head to the Senate. There, Palpatine can sense their presence, a dozen powerful auras, and his fingers clench into a fist. This is far more dangerous than he anticipated. As skilled as he is, he cannot possibly hope to defeat all of them. Before he realizes it, the doors slide open and Mace Windu steps in, accompanied by Plo Koon and Ajen Kalar.
Master Windu, what an unexpected surprise. Do you have business to discuss with me?
Save the theatrics, Chancellor. We know the truth. You have been plotting against the Republic. You are the Sith Lord who orchestrated this war. But today, you will face justice.
Master, those are rather bold accusations you are leveling against me. Such things are dangerous. Unless, of course, you have proof of such claims.
I do not need proof. I only need to ask you to do one thing. If you truly have the Republic's best interests at heart, then you can officially return emergency powers right here, right now. And then step down as Chancellor to allow the wheels of democracy to turn.
So, it is treason then, Master Jedi.
With a sudden roar, Palpatine springs forward and ignites his lightsaber. He rushes towards Ajen Kalar, who is a second too late in bringing his lightsaber up. Palpatine's weapon cuts through his chest and leaves him gasping for air as he flops to the ground. Master Plo unleashes a burst of Force judgment that sends Palpatine leaping back. Mace tries to follow up and slashes at him, but the Chancellor kicks him in the chest. The Force gives Palpatine strength, and it sends him flying out of the room. However, as the Chancellor follows, he finds the rest of the Jedi Council standing outside. Anakin lingers behind, the only one who still hasn't ignited his weapon.
Anakin, you see, the Jedi are taking over.
Chancellor, you know I trust you. So please, do not do this. Surrender peacefully and we can settle this matter.
Surrender? My boy, you are not as strong as I thought you were. I am disappointed.
He lets out another Force shriek and rushes into the center of their forces. His lightsaber whirls around like a hurricane, blocking their strikes as the Jedi Masters strike at once. He parries Ki-Adi-Mundi's blade, then dances aside from Kit Fisto's counterstrike. When Obi-Wan comes from behind, he drags his lightsaber over his head and knocks the Jedi Master aside, only to face Stas Ali's weapon. Just then, Yoda leaps over the slashes at him. Though Palpatine manages to block it, the sheer force of the attack sends him flying back. He turns and unleashes a burst of lightning that arcs through the hallway and forces them to defend. Palpatine takes this chance and attacks. He moves low, ducking under Plo Koon and CC-Teen's attacks before striking at Coleman Kutch, hitting his thigh and sending him stumbling. He follows up by using the Force to throw Depa Billaba against a wall. Then he jerks his lightsaber up and slashes Ki-Adi-Mundi, taking his eye. But as he turns to fight again, he feels 3 lightsabers pressing against him. Even his Force-enhanced strength struggles to hold him back. Finally, the momentum of the attack throws him back, and he sees Anakin approaching from the side. Cursing, he brushes past Obi-Wan, who tries to help his student, and rushes at the boy. At first, the young Jedi fights defensively, blocking these attacks. However, he can see the hatred in Palpatine's eyes, directed not at the Jedi Council, but at him as well.
I could have given you everything you desired, my boy, but you were too weak to accept it. Now you will die here.
No. Now I'm going to bring you to justice.
He pushes Palpatine and sends him flying. The lightsaber nearly flies from his hand as he looks at Anakin in shock, but he gives him no reprieve as the Jedi continues to rain down attacks on him. The blade flashes again and again, shattering the Chancellor's momentum and forcing him on the defensive. This does little good as he feels the full power of the Chosen One. Soon, his lightsaber flies from his hands, and Palpatine is forced to one knee as he looks up at Anakin. Mace steps forward and twirls his lightsaber, preparing to finish him off. But as he raises his weapon, Anakin holds his lightsaber in front of him and shakes his head.
No, we can't kill him. Not like this. He must stand trial.
Do not be naive, Skywalker.
The Chancellor controls the Senate. Whatever trial they grant him will not be fair. He will use everything in his power to get free. That may be, but the Jedi are not here to play judge, jury, and executioner. We're peacekeepers. If we do this, it will be just as Palpatine wants, to alienate us from the Republic.
Anakin speaks truly, Master Windu. We do not have the authority to kill him now. The Senate might question why they were not informed.
Need the Senate support, we do. Keep Palpatine prisoner, we should.
Mace glances over at them, keeping his lightsaber pressed against his throat. However, he eventually pulls the lightsaber aside and cuffs the Chancellor. They escort him away and take him to the Jedi Temple. He gives a respectful nod to Anakin, but admits he hopes he is wrong. When the Senate comes back in session, the Jedi report everything they encountered to them. They show the video logs, and Anakin personally gives testimony. All of that links back to Palpatine's increasingly authoritarian rule over the Republic. The opposition senators are quick to take advantage of this and corroborate these claims, insisting Palpatine has become too powerful, and even if he isn't a Sith, he must be stripped of all emergency powers. Not only that, but the Jedi push for Palpatine to be executed for his crimes to ensure that he can cause no further trouble. As the Senate hears this, murmurs descend upon the rotunda as 100 quiet debates discuss the matter and take in the information. However, it appears like most of them are supportive of the Jedi and their allies and will agree to their request. However, just as the vote is being cast, another person takes the podium to speak, Admiral Tarkin, who regards the Jedi with a distasteful look.
I will be the first to admit these are troubling developments, and we certainly must investigate. But I must wonder whether it is only the Chancellor who is hiding things.
What are you talking about, Admiral?
I am talking about how you have openly admitted that the Chancellor confided in you about these Force abilities. I must ask, what would convince him to do something so risky? Revealing this would doubtlessly implicate him and bring him under much scrutiny.
He was hoping to get my support in his new order, hoping that I would give my backing and serve as his enforcer.
Now hang on one moment. Anakin is not the one on trial here. And why not? You said an investigation should be conducted. I agree. And shouldn't that start with those around him as well? After all, we must be certain that he does not harbor any sympathies towards the Chancellor, especially in light of recent evidence.
He orders the security footage to be displayed again, but the scene takes place a few moments before Palpatine reveals himself. Instead of talks of power and changes to the Republic, it is now talks about Anakin's attachments and his marriage to Padme. This footage has not even been seen by the Jedi, and many of them gasp in surprise. A few of them glance at Anakin warily. Mace in particular looks at him with a clenched jaw. It is exactly what Tarkin hopes for, as he questions whether the Jedi do not have their own biases, and that they might be pushing for a harsher punishment to hide something. After all, Anakin is still a member of the Jedi Council. Furthermore, he questions why the Jedi are acting as his jailers to begin with. Though he might be a Sith, he is still the Chancellor first and foremost. That means he must face trial in the civil courts, and not by the Jedi, since they are not the only parties affected. He suggests that the Jedi hand him over to the military, while they return to the front lines as the CIS still remains active, albeit in a weakened state. With all of that, the Jedi must begin watering down their demands, as Palpatine receives some reprieve. They refuse to let him go to Republic custody, but there is enough doubt that they cannot immediately execute Palpatine. Mace's gaze does not leave Anakin as they make their way out, looking over at the boy and crossing his arms.
You've been keeping secrets from us. Why didn't you mention that you were married? Or are having a child?
This is a serious accusation, Skywalker, and can compromise your position as a witness if you are concealing information. It may look like you are simply trying to cover up your own scandal.
I understand how bad it looks, Masters, but rest assured that my loyalty is still to the Jedi and the Republic. It is true, Skywalker still chose the Jedi at the end of the day. That must count for something, and shows his sincerity. It was a difficult position for him, no doubt.
Hope not a costly decision. It is. Yes.
The rest of them adjourn, starting to plan their next step to deal with the Senate. With the Jedi Council together, they are at least able to coordinate their efforts far better than normal. When the initial Senate probes arrive, beginning their inquiry into the Jedi Order, they are for the most part able to show that they are trustworthy enough to hold Palpatine accountable. However, while they are here, the remnants of the CIS rally on Mustafar as the Separatist Council gather to prepare themselves. They initially intend to make their last stand there and hopefully sue for peace from a relative position of strength, but the chaos caused by Palpatine's arrest provides them with an opportunity. Newt Gunray sees this chaos, and while he initially followed the Chancellor's plan, he now decides to go off on his own, gathering the droid armies. He orders sudden counteroffensives, intent on throwing the Outer Rim into chaos. With their leadership weakened, the Republic forces reel from the attack, forcing the clones to quickly adapt and organize their own defenses. Though they are skilled strategists and even better soldiers than the Jedi, without their general's unnatural powers, they are forced to rely on standard doctrine, which focuses on defending against superior numbers rather than risking battle. As a result, there are several points where the Separatists are able to cause significant damage and muddle the lines. Some even manage to break the encirclement and strike behind Republic lines. Tarkin is also quick to take advantage of this, as he pushes for the Jedi Council to continue their duties in the front lines and return to their service. This will also weaken their front and allow him to continue pushing for Palpatine's release to the Republic custody. While the Jedi try to resist, this is a far more popular position due to the war, and many senators urge the Council to do their part in solidifying the front. Reluctantly, Obi-Wan returns to rally his troops from Utapau. Ki-Adi-Mundi follows, and then Depa Billaba. With the Council leaving, they begin to feel the pressure as Tarkin is going on the attack and urges them to hand over the Chancellor and allow the Republic to investigate. Anakin is one of the few Council members to remain behind, along with Mace Windu. They both try to handle the situation as best they can. However, while the younger Jedi tries to offer his assistance, Mace is reluctant to trust him with the secrets he's kept. The older Jedi remains wary of his advice and keeps him at arm's length.
I'm telling you, we must rally the Senate to our side. Padme and the other reformists will help us.
Senator Amidala, that is a risky move. You and her have already been linked together. If Tarkin sees this, he will call it collusion and claim the Jedi are playing politics. I believe our best chance is to stick to our defense and hold out until the rest of the Council returns.
Is it Tarkin or you who thinks we'll be colluding?
Accusations like this are beneath you, Skywalker. All right. I suppose I am also wary of playing this strategy, but can you blame me? Your personal and professional relationship with the Senator has been muddled. We cannot be certain where one starts and the other ends.
Yes, you can, Master. You said if I help bring down the Chancellor, I would have earned your trust.
I did say that. But this, I never knew.
I know hiding it was wrong, but in the end I did the right thing. Do I look like I have fallen? You say there's conflict within me, confusion. Well, isn't everyone confused right now? We live in a time where we barely know friend from foe.
One good act does not wash out the bad, Skywalker. You weren't just conflicted. You acted on them.
Master, if you value the Jedi Order, then please at least hear what I have to say.
I am certain I'm going to regret this, but all right. What did you have in mind?
Later, the Senate building sleeps uneasily, with only the red lights of the security droids lighting things. Mace and Anakin step into the deserted hallways, leading the way of Padme to follow. Her Senate access codes are what allowed them to get this far, but Mace can't stop glancing at her, both impressed and disapproving.
Of all the reckless ideas you've had, Skywalker, this might be the one that finally gets us court-martialed.
You mean if they find us? I've bent the rules countless times before.
I mean when they find us, breaking into the Chancellor's terminal in the middle of the crisis. A senator in tow, your pregnant wife.
You'll find I'm harder to intimidate than most senators, Master Windu. And I'm no stranger to sneaking around. I married Anakin, after all.
That's one way to look at treason.
They reach the Chancellor's office, where Anakin presses his gloved palm to the locked panel and closes his eyes. The circuits hum, the Force reaching through metal and circuitry. With a quiet click, the door slides open.
You've been practicing.
Not even going to ask if you've done this before.
They step inside. The office is dark except for the soft blue wash of Coruscant's skyline through the window.
Make it fast. If Tarkin has control of the Senate Guard, he'll have slicers monitoring this terminal.
That's exactly why we're here.